Hello everyone, welcome back to the next part of the scoreboard tutorial series. And if you haven't watched the previous parts, I would suggest you to do so. For this part of the tutorial, I'll be going over how you can save your points when you do a score. So if I were to play this game right now, I don't have the system set up yet. So if I play this and then do a score, you can see there the home will have its point. But if I click on next round, the points will be reset. So how do we do it so that we can save the score? First things first, let's right click on the content browser and go to Blueprint class. And in the Blueprint class over here, we're going to have to find a blueprint called save game. Right here. And this BP save game is the save game that I made for my example. So it'll be right here, but we will need the save game blueprint. So just click on that and then click on select. And I will have this new blueprint thing over here, which is a save game that we can use. As you can see in the parent class, it's save game. And let's rename this as, I'll rename this as BP save example, like that. Let's go ahead and open that. And we'll see this window right here. And what we're going to do is to add in the variables that we want to save into this save game blueprint. And in terms of event graph, we don't need to add in anything for the event graph. All we need is to have the variables here. So what we need to add is the variable for the home score, away score, the minutes, and the seconds. And also to check if the game is finished or not. So let's go ahead and do that. So for the first variable, I'm going to do save home score, like that. And I'm going to change from Boolean to integer, since I'm using integer for the home score. And then same thing, I'll do a save away score. And the reason why I'm adding a save is because the blueprint that I have right here, I already have the variables as home score and away score. So I want to kind of differentiate it so I don't get too confused later on down the road when I'm building this. And next is the save minutes. Let's call it like that. And then save seconds. And I'm going to make a game over state. Just check if the game is if the minutes and seconds are to 0 and we need to restart the game from fresh. So I'm going to use a Boolean for that, and then we'll go over how we can set that up in a later bit. So that will be the 5 variables that I will need for this save game blueprint. So there's that. That's pretty much all you need to do for the save game blueprint. So let's go ahead and close that, and we'll go back to this scoreboard tutorial blueprint that I have right here. So from our scoreboard blueprint, we could build a system, the save game system here, but for me, I'm going to create a function for the save game and for the load game. So first I'm going to go to the function tab over here and then press on the plus icon, and it'll create a new function. I'm going to call this save. And the first thing to do is to check if whether or not we need a new save game or to load it from the previous save game so we can overwrite that. So let's search for does save game exist right here and plug that in. And then we'll link the slot name into the save node over here. So then we'll make a slot name so we can refer to this later on. And from here, I'm going to create a branch so we can check for if the save game is there or not and link that up to the condition. So if the save game is true, which means like there's already a save game that exists within this game, we'll do a load game from slot over here. And from here, we'll just take the slot name over here. So we will need to take the slot name from here. We can either plug this in from here, or a more simpler way is we can search for a get slot over here. So it'll take the slot name over here so we can use. Then the next thing I would do, from the return value of the load game from slot, I will promote this into a variable. And I'm going to rename this variable into a reference. So I'm going to do it as a save reference. So then I could use the save reference later on when I need to. And that will be the true part of this branch. So for the false, we'll need to create the new save game slot over here. So then from the false, let's drag out and then search for a create save game object right here. For the class, we'll choose the save game blueprint example that I made for this. And you can see that I have the blueprint save game from the before, and there's also a save game, which is the original save game from Unreal. So I would recommend not naming your save game into save game, which you might get confused. So I'm going to click on the save example. And then from here, from the return value, same thing, I'm going to set the save reference. So let's just take the save reference from here and then do a set save reference and link those two up like so. And then from this save reference over here, let's do a cast to the save game example that we made over here. And also link the top one to the cast to save game, save example. Then from here on, we need to set up so that all our variables can be saved within the save game slot. To do this, we can drag out from the as bp save example pin over here to access our variables for within this save example. So let's get actually we need to set our home score, so the save home score over here. And then I'm gonna drag that out again and then do the save set save away score. And we'll do that for the home and the minutes and the seconds too. Like that. And then I'm gonna kind of get this in position first. And then link all those executions up to each other. And for all these variables that we're about to set, we'll just grab it from our variables tab from this blueprint. So for our home score, we're just going to grab from the home score over here, do a get, and then link that home score up into the save home score. And then for the away score, same thing. So here we will have the setup for if we are saving the game, it will save the home score variables, all these variables, into the save game blueprint right here, so we can load that up later on when we need to load the game. All right, there's also one variable I forgot to put in, which is the get the game over state. So I'm going to add that in as well. And then since I haven't made any variables for the checking if the game is over or not, I'm going to create one over here. Just add in a variable, make it a boolean, and then I'm going to make this as is game over. So then I can use this in the event graph when I put everything together for the save game. So same thing, get that is game over, link that up here, and then compile and save. So now that our variables are saved within the save game blueprint, we need to actually save it as well. So from this execution tab over here, let's get the save game to slot right here. So we'll save the game into the slot so it can be recorded. And for the reference, we're just going to take the save reference from over here, get that, and then plug that into the save game object. And for the slot, we'll just need the same thing over here. We'll just need the slot name from our function. So same thing, we'll just get the slot name right here. And then put that in a position, like so. That will be it for the save game function. Let's go ahead and compile and save. The next thing we need to do is to create a load function so we can load the game. So at the functions tab, let's just add in another function, and then I'm going to call this load. And then from this load function, same thing as the save function, we need to check if the save game exists. So let's go ahead and drag out from the execution and then search for does save game exist right here. And then same thing, I'll just plug this into the beginning of the function. Next, we need a branch for it to check if it actually exists or not. So from there, I'll just do a branch like that. And for the branch, we only need a true part of the condition, since if the save game does exist, then we'll load from that save game. And if there's no save game, then, well, there's nothing to load from, so we don't need anything in false. As such, I will drag out from the execution from true, and then do a load game to slot. Load game from slot, right here. And the slot name will be the same as the slot over here, so I'll just drag out from the slot name and do a get slot name. Like that. Now for return value, we need to do a cast. So let's drag out from the return value and do a cast to the save game example. Right here, the save example. Next, from here, we don't need to set the save game variables anymore. We need to get it instead to like read in all the values to set it for the variables within this blueprint. So let's do a get. First, I'll do a get game over state. And then I'll get all the other variables in the save game. So, all right, so these are the variables that we'll read from the save game blueprint that we have. Now from here, let's go over the game over state. We need to check if the game has ended or if it's just a rematch because one of the players scored the game. So from here, we could get this game over variable from the blueprint and then do a set and then plug that into the condition over here and have this linked up and then do a branch like this to check if the game needs to restart or not. Or I don't think we actually need this. I think it's actually a bit redundant, so I can delete that and then just plug this condition, the game over state, into the condition here, and then plug the execution to the branch like that. And if it's true, then, well, the game is going to start from scratch, so we don't need anything in the true. But if it's not, if it's just a rematch, because a player scored a point and then the time is still counting down, then it's going to be false. And in the false area, then we need to read in from all these variables from the save game. So in the false, I'm going to do it. We're going to grab these variables, the home score, away score, second score, middle score. And then we will take the variables from a save game and set it into our variables within this blueprint. So I'm going to take the home score and do a set. Link that up to the false, and then link the save home score into this home score. And the same thing with the away score, do a set, and then link that up with the away score. And we'll do it for the minutes and the seconds as well. So, all right, now this is all we need to do in the load. That's how we're going to load in our variables into the game itself. So let's compile and save. So right now, if we play it, since we haven't added in any of the load and save over here, it won't do anything in terms of saving. So we need to put these two functions into the event graph. And to do that, it's actually pretty straightforward. I'll start from load. From the event begin play, I'm going to grab in my load function and then plug this into beginning and before the check score and check time. And in the slot name, we need to give it a slot name. So I'll just pretty much promote this into a variable. And then we can see that there's the variable type is going to be a string. And then we need to put in the string into the slot name. So let's compile and save that first. And in terms of slot name, you can pretty much name this into anything you would like. So for me, I'll just name this as slave slot, like that. And then it will just take the slave slot. So if you have multiple save games you need to do, then you probably will have another slot name for this variable. So there's a load, and then next we'll do the save. And then in terms of save, we want to save the game when the player has scored. So we'll do it in the begin overlap in the home goal collision and for the away goal collision. So from here, after the check score, I'm gonna put the function in between check score and the home create widgets, and it will go same for the away one over here. So what I will do is first I will create more space for myself by dragging all the nodes behind to a farther place, and then from here I'm going to drag in our save function. And then because we need to check if it's game over or not, we can set the game over into unchecked. So then we will need this to tell the game that it's not game over. So don't reset all the scores yet. So let's plug that into the executable, and then put the save into the widget over here. And then slot name, same thing, just get the slot name and then plug it into the slot name. And we'll do the same thing for the away as well. So again, set the game over unchecked, and then have the save function in the event graph, plug that in, and then have the the slot name into the slot name over here. And that will be it for saving the game over here. So when the timer has counted down to 0, which is over here, there will be a game over, right? So we need to do another save over here, and to have the is game over variable checked. So we're going to have this. We're going to get the game. Not get. My bad. We're going to set the is game over checked. So then we will tell the game that indeed the game has stopped. So we want to reset all the scores. So we'll have the set checked over here. And then same thing, I'm going to add in the save function and then plug those in, and then have the slot name, and have the slot name plugged into the slot name over here, and then link that up into the create widget node over here. And since I set the game over here in the save, it will set the game over state over here to checked, right? And then if I restart the game and then the game play again, it will load the game state over here, and then see if it's true or false. If it's false, then it'll run through this variables to have the game loaded with the scores in. And that'll be it. Just compile and save. And then we have the save game system set up. So if I were to play this game right now, let's see, it's counting down from 20 seconds, and I scored, and I got home score of 1, and then the game clock is at 70 seconds. So if I press on next round, doesn't work. Okay, so I figured out what went wrong. So the blueprint was taking the old save game that I have created to test out before this tutorial. So it was taking the save game from this blueprint right here. And then since I had this save game blueprint the same name as well, I think that's why I got confused. So all I need to do was simply make a delete game in slot node, and then put a slot name inside here. And then I'll just put from the load function, after the branch for the save game exists, I'll just put it in the true to have the save game to be deleted. Compile and save, and then let it run first, and then all I need to do is simply stop the simulation, and then go back into the blueprint, and then relink that into the load game slot over here. And now if I compile and save, it should work. So if I press on play and then move the ball into the goal, it will score a point. And if I press on next round, then yeah, it will continue down with the timer counting down. And then if I score again, then yeah, it will make another score like so. So if I score from away, it will score the way and record the timing and the scores like that. And then if it goes to 0, then it will restart everything like so. All right, so that's how you can make a save game system within your scoreboard blueprint. And you could also explore some different ways to do a save gain as well. But hope you guys find this tutorial useful, and thank you for watching. And as always, never stop learning.